Okay, hello everybody, my name's Simon Wheatcroft. I am blind, and just to put that into perspective, I still have light perception, but I can't see anybody in this room. So I can see there's lights on the ceiling. So that's the level of vision I have when this story takes place. And my story is going to meander a little bit before we get to New York, so bear with me for about 30 minutes until we actually get to the good bit. But my story starts with a dream. And that dream was to climb to the top of a mountain, propose to my girlfriend. I've put in a lot of effort, she's going to say yes. So we head to America, we get to the base of a mountain. I'd never climbed a mountain before, but I thought, how hard can this be? So for 2 hours we hiked, and I always thought mountains were going to be really steep, but it turned out it was really flat. And that was because for 2 hours we'd been walking away from the mountain. I struggled with that because my girlfriend could see, so I thought, how did you not notice that the mountain was getting smaller the further we got away? So after a small argument, we turned around, headed toward the mountain. Mountains, it turns out, are very steep. So we begin to hike up this mountain. The mountain's actually Half Dome in Yosemite, if anyone knows that mountain. And it's basically a hike up the side of the mountain, and it turns out it's quite difficult. It's quite steep. I was beginning to slip and trip and stumble a lot. There are some pretty sheer cliff faces. If you fall off, you're probably not coming back. But I think I'm going to keep moving forward. I really want to get to the top. So we continue. It gets harder and harder and harder. I begin to slip and trip even more. So we get to the halfway point. We sit down, we have a conversation. That's a very difficult conversation, and I decide to quit climbing that mountain just because I can't see. Not wanting to ruin the entire day, I do propose. She does say yes. We go to Vegas, we get married. We spend a while longer in America, then we return to the UK. So back in the UK, I'm in the midst of a bit of a career change. So I've been working full time, now I was going to go back and be a student. So in typical student mode, I had a lot of time on my hands. I was absolutely broke. So I was spending a lot of time myself at home, thinking about quitting climbing this mountain. And I told myself that I couldn't really live my life like this. So I said, I'm no longer going to quit just because I can't see, and I'm certainly not going to quit just because something's hard. So I thought, what can I do to go out there and push the boundaries and see what's possible? Now, at that point in time, I owned a pair of running shoes. So I thought, I'm going to put on these shoes, go out, and learn to run alone. Fortunately, I did live near some football pitches. So I headed down to the football pitch. I positioned myself between the goalposts. I just ran up and down the football pitch. At the same time, I was using an app called Runkeeper. Now, what was interesting about Runkeeper, first ever fitness app to give information through audio. So rather than having to look at a screen to get information, just keep it in my pocket. It'd say, run a mile. You've run it really slow, but you've run a mile. So I had this information, and it was great. First time I'd ever had access to this. So I kept on running up and down this pitch, and then it began to get a little bit too dangerous, and that was thanks to the dog walkers. They assumed I could see. I assumed they would move. It was time to find somewhere slightly safer. Again, fortunate, living in an airport. Now, the airport, I know you're not thinking, unfortunately, living in an airport, but it's not that bad. So, living near this airport, and the airport, runway and terminal, I think, was finished. But they never quite finished the infrastructure. So that meant there were roads at both ends closed. So no cars could get down, no pedestrians, no dog walkers. So my wife would drop me off. I'd step onto this road, and I'd just run up and down a straight piece of road. Now, the way I navigated at this point in time was double yellow lines. So there's double yellow lines underfoot, so you could just run up the double yellow lines, turn around, run back down the double yellow lines. And then I started to notice I'd always feel some grates underfoot when I heard this noise.
0.3 miles.
So I thought, I wonder if it's possible to pair what it feels like underfoot with audio distance markers and learn to run the open road. So one day, my wife dropped me off. I ran up and down the road to build up a little bit of confidence. I stepped out onto the dual carriageway at the top. I told myself that cars move, and I just ran down the road. Thankfully, there was double yellow lines along the road, so I could follow them down to the bottom. Got to the bottom of the road, burst into tears. Could not believe what I'd achieved. A few weeks ago, I was running on a football pitch, then a closed road. Now I was running the open road. But there was one thing I did know, and that's if I didn't get back before the closed road, before my wife did, she was going to kill me. So I sprinted back, got back just in time, she picked me up, went home. So now, for the next few weeks, I decided to lie to my wife. I would not recommend that. And she would drop me off, I'd wait until she leaves, and I began to learn to run the open road. So thankfully, there was always something underfoot, be it the double yellows. Sometimes, if you drifted one way, there was grass on one side, if the other bush on that side, and so on. Sometimes the pavement was arced. So if there's an arc, one foot ends up higher than the other. So again, you get a sense of drifting. And then turns, so like 90-degree turns, right, left, and so on. Basically memorized the distance markers on Runkeeper, paired that with something underfoot, and I knew that's when I had to turn. So there was a few obstacles that were always interesting. Those were things like lampposts, traffic lights, road signs, trees. The only way you do find them is by running into them. But pain's a fantastic teacher. You remember exactly where it is and you don't run into it next time. I've got a really bad throat, so I'm going to end up coughing a lot, I think. So there's one obstacle that was always a challenge and still remains a challenge, and that's traffic cones. So now I needed to tell my wife what I was doing, so I was quickly banned from from running. But it turns out if you mope around the house enough, eventually she kicks you back out and you're allowed to train again. So now with permission to train, I decided to see how far I can run. Deciding how far I could run, I entered a 100-mile race. So from the football pitch to race day was 6 months of training. So if anyone's into running, that's quite compressed. You'd usually spend a lot longer than that training. So fast forward to race day. There's no way I can compete solo. So the only way you're going to be able to do it is by using guides. So that person would run alongside. So the idea was they were going to run alongside and ensure I didn't run into anything. So I trained at an airport. Now airports are renowned for being flat. The race I'd entered was in the Cotswolds. I didn't realise at that point in time the Cotswolds were renowned for being very hilly. I'd never run a hill in my life. So it turns out after 50 miles of hills, you're broken. Emotionally and physically, I was in pieces. But I told myself I was never going to quit because something was hard. But I thought failure is acceptable. And the only way I was going to fail is if I could no longer stand. So I stood back up, I ran for 33 more miles until I could no longer stand. And then I was removed from the race. But in 6 months, I'd gone from not being able to run to running 83 miles, which was a fantastic achievement. So I continued to compete, lots of different distances, 5Ks, 10Ks, 50Ks, 100Ks, half marathons. Never quite got round to a marathon. And then ASICS gave me a call and said we'd like to do a TV commercial. I thought, oh yeah, I'll do a TV commercial. That's pretty cool. But I said, there's one thing I want. I want an entry into the New York Marathon. They said, no problem, we'll give you a slot. So in 2012, jumped on a plane, headed to New York. That was the only year the New York Marathon has ever been cancelled. Got on a plane, returned home. Now we had a little bit more time to prepare. So I thought, well, New York is tantalisingly close to Boston. Perhaps I could run from Boston all the way to New York and then run the New York City Marathon. And the only reason Boston held so much appeal to me is because that was the headquarters of Runkeeper. That was the company that had enabled this to this point, so I thought, why not run from their head office to New York? I thought it might be a bit too easy to take a series of guide runners, so why not use social media, get people to come out and run with me. So I teamed up with Twitter, Airbnb, and Runkeeper, ran a social campaign for people to come out, run 1 mile, 2 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever distance they wanted to cover, and help me get from one city to the next. So day one, there's a storm. And I'm thinking, no one's going to turn up. How am I going to get through Boston, torrential rain, it's pitch black. No one's going to turn up. But oddly enough, 30 people turned up on that first day. And those people in the storm ran ahead, cleared the path, and ensured I'd get a clean run through on the first day. So these are just some of the people that turned up on the first day. So day 2, turns out lots of people use social media. I know, who knew? This was a few years ago, though. Yeah. Oh, Snapchat didn't even exist. So yeah, day 2, turns out, who knew, young people use social media. They're big on it, apparently. So the local high school came out and decided to run with me. Now these guys are 5K runners. I'm not a 5K runner, I'm not quick. So that basically means you're just going to be embarrassed. So these guys far quicker embarrass me, made me look like I'm old and tired. So we run 3 miles together. And then they say, Simon, would you like to run to our school? I'm like, where's the school? They say, it's 1.5 miles in another direction. I'm like, don't really want to add distance. I'm not convinced. But they persuade me, run to the school, and it turns out the entire school had lined the streets. Hundreds of children just cheering our names as we ran around. Absolutely incredible. Made it feel like we were really scripting this. And that 1.5 miles was put into perspective later that day when the navigator, who was actually sat at the back of the room, put your hand up, Neil. He was the navigator, sent us the wrong way. No one cheered after those few miles in my direction. Not a bit though, Neil, not a bit, don't worry about it. So day 3 we get a real sense of how epic this run is. The person in this photo is actually called Neil, it's not that Neil, it's another Neil. And this Neil is actually the person that met me at mile 50 on my first ever ultra and ran those 33 miles with me. He came out, wanted to do this with me, ended up running the entire thing. So day 4, again, everyone uses social media, including the local church. So this time they lined the streets and sang songs. Incredible. It really did add to the real movie feel of this adventure. And later that day, running down a very quiet country road, a car drives by and someone writes down the road and says, it's too dangerous to run on the road. Get off the road. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Then they pull up, thinking, okay, a bit of an argument, let's have an argument. So we woke up, this lady steps out the car, and we explain what we're doing. Same running from Boston to New York. She said, I came second in the Boston Marathon. I'm like, of course you did. And she said, I came second in the New York Marathon. I'm like, okay. And then she listed a load of marathons she'd won. I thought, okay, we've got a crazy lady. Let's walk away slowly. But we took a name, snapped a photo. Later that day, got back to the Airbnb. Turned out we'd bumped into America's most successful ever marathon runner in the middle of nowhere on a back road in Connecticut. So day 5. And day 5 was the first time we sort of stopped and really took a moment to appreciate exactly what we're doing. In this photo, it's me, Neil Bacon, and a lady called Ali. Ali was a representative of Airbnb. She was there to make sure everything went smooth, but it turned out she found it more fun to just come out and run with us every day. So day 6, you realise how much these things hurt. Unfortunately, on the first day, I'd hurt myself 6 miles in. So the only way I could continue to run was every 5 miles, ice down my knee, numb it, put ice in a compression, carry on running. So at this point in time, I was basically just managing pain. So day 7 again, I'm feeling down, I'm hurt, it's awful. So let's get some kids to embarrass us again. So another high school comes out, runs 5K. But rather than embarrassing us, actually lifts our spirits and really makes me feel alive again. So day 8, the only way we could really continue this run was every day we'd take ice baths. Basically, it takes the inflammation down, so you can continue to run. So on this particular day, happened to near the ocean, so thought, why not go into the ocean, cool down in the ocean? Now, I was really, really jealous of Neil because he had a coat. I was freezing, but now I get to look really tough because Neil's wearing a coat. So I'm thankful that count now. So day 9, this is the day, personally for me, it meant a lot. When I first started training, it was actually the week my eldest son was born. So I thought, why don't I bring my son out, my eldest son? My youngest son's passport got denied, oddly, different story. You can ask me about that later. So although my eldest son actually got to make it out. So the idea was 2 miles out, he'd meet with me, we'd run the last 2 miles together and cross the finish line. Now really kindly, the New York Marathon had given us the official finish line. So the finish line with the clock on the top and the ticker tape across and stuff. And this was basically the only ever time I was going to cross the marathon line first. I'm not a quick runner. This was a very special moment. So not far from the finish line, my son says, Daddy, I'm tired. I'm thinking, oh, I'm pretty tired. I've run a long way, but we'll stop. So we stop and chat. And while we're stood chatting, my son gets ahead a little bit, crosses the finish line first, breaks the ticker tape, gets the only medal, and is probably still the youngest person to ever cross that finish line first. So this is my son at the point in time. He was only 4. Turns out he was quite competitive. Don't know where I got that from. Certainly not me. So now we're on to the marathon. The marathon is obviously what we came here to do. It's a great race. I'd say it's the best marathon in the world. The support is phenomenal. People cheer the entire way. It's absolutely incredible. So together, me, Neil and Ali crossed the finish line. And interestingly, in this adventure, people got really just swept up by the moment and began to believe. Ali, the furthest she had ever run was 20 miles. She ran 100 miles in this adventure. The furthest Neil had ever run was 5 miles. He ran 83, which is a huge, huge jump. Neil and I, the Neil in this photo, ran 260 miles to get to this finish line. And today stands my furthest ever distance. In total, that was 1 million steps. 1 million steps without running into anything, running into another person, a perfect 1 million steps. Then at 1,000,001, turns out it all falls apart, because as you cross the finish line, your guide starts cheering, forgets to tell you, you carry on running, and you just plow into the person in front. But I try not to think about that one step too much. So now we're back in the UK. And I've managed to achieve some great things thanks to one piece of technology, one piece of data, distance. So I started to think, well, perhaps if we could move the technology forward, maybe I could do something even more impressive. So I thought, training solo was great. Can I compete solo? And in my mind, the only thing I needed was the right location. So where in the world can a blind person go and run, snake around, and not run into anything? Places in the desert. So I find a race. It's in Namibia. 7 days in the desert, 155 miles. So that means you've got to survive in the desert as well. So you've got to take all your own food and all that stuff. So I call the race organizer. I say, hi, I'd like to enter your race. One slight problem, I'm blind. She says, that's not a problem. Blind people enter this race. Just bring a guide. Well, I'm not going to bring a guide. I'm going to do it alone. She says, really? I said, yeah, I've got this amazing piece of technology. Does all the navigation. She says, okay, that sounds great. We'll let you enter. I'm like, okay, cool. Put down the phone. Couldn't believe she believed the lies. I had no technology. But I thought, we've got enough time. Figure this out along the way. So this is 9 months from race day. No technology, so I just commit to the training. 6 months from race day, no technology. We still commit to the training. 3 months from the race, no technology, starting to get a little nervous. 12 weeks from the race, we still don't have the technology sorted, but I am in Las Vegas. While in Las Vegas, I do what everybody does, and that's you drink a lot and you don't sleep. And during those moments, you may bump into interesting people. Happened to bump into a few people from IBM. I pitch an idea, they'll love it, they say, we'll do it. How long have we got? We've got 12 weeks. Still agreed to do it. Everyone's drunk in Vegas. It's great. So we get back to the UK. By the time you mess around, you've only got 8 weeks left. So we've got 8 weeks. It's quite a compressed sort of time frame to do that in. So the only way you're realistically going to do it is starting to make assumptions. So assumption number 1, the course will never change. Assumption number 2, there is no obstacles in the desert. These things were all confirmed by the race organizer. Great, let's do it. So the way you're going to do it is something I called corrective navigation. So in corrective navigation, rather than saying turn left in 100 meters, turn right in 250 meters, it constantly corrects your direction. So if you're going in the correct direction, no feedback. As soon as you deviate from the correct direction, it used beeps to bring you back in line. The further you deviate from the correct direction, higher the frequency of the beep. Really, really simple. And what's interesting about that is even if it's a very complicated shape like a circle, you can still break it into a series of straight lines, break it down into bearings, course bearings, straight lines. You can do it. It actually turned out the course was a big letter P. So we get to the desert. Well, actually, the app gets finished on the Friday. We're in the desert on the Sunday, so it's tight. So we made our key assumptions. We're in the desert, wake up in the morning, and there's a race briefing. Now, when you've been to quite a few races, you ignore the race briefing because it's the same things. Be safe, da, 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 da. So I'm not really listening. Thank you. And I tune in just at the end. Just long enough to hear the race organizer say, and we've changed the course. So I'm like, oh, what do you mean you changed the course? So I head over to have a quick conversation. And she says, it's not that bad. All we've done is move the course a few hundred meters to the right for the 6 miles. I'm like, oh, well, that's not that bad. So now, rather than navigating on silence, we lock in to a set frequency, follow that frequency, we drop back in when the course becomes correct. So the desert, when you're blind, is boring. There's nothing. You know, I've got nothing to look at. There's no sound, there's no smells. It's basically sensory deprivation. It's not fun. But turns out the navigation system works. Works really well. I can run across the desert, it's fine. And what we'd done, we'd programmed it, so at the end of every day, plays a little message, congratulations, you know, you've made it. So we get a little notification saying I've made it. I think, okay, I'm going to get a bit of a round of applause. No applause. Thinking, oh, first blind person to cross a desert. I thought, you know, so I might clap or cheer or something. Now for safety, and the lawyers, you know, they get a bit agitated that you're going to die. So they made me take a ghost runner. So that ghost runner had to follow behind, ensure, you know, I stayed alive, step in if something went wrong. So I turn around to the ghost runner and I say, where's the finish line? He says, I don't know, but it ain't here. Turned out they'd also moved the finish line. So now we're lost in the desert. Thankfully, you can see. Turns out it's Neil Bacon again, the guy that always seems to be with me. So we traipse around the desert. Turns out we'd passed the finish line, so we just had to double back. You get to the finish line, they do clap and cheer. Really nice, finish for the day. So day 2, we head out. Again, the desert is boring. There's not much to really tell. So I'm just running through the desert. The system's working pretty well. So as I'm running through, take a massive blow to the face, hit the deck. So Neil comes running over and says, you're okay, you're okay. I'm like, what happened? And he said, you ran into a flagpole. I was like, a flagpole? Is there a lot of flagpoles? He said, no, there's one. In 800 kilometers of desert, I had found the only flagpole. So in shame, I cried. I stood back up and I carried on running, finished the day. So day 3, we head out. Again, desert boring, but we keep moving forward. Every 6 miles or so, there's an aid station where you can stop and get new water and things like that. So I'm at the aid station eating some peanut M&Ms because they do not melt in the desert. So I'm eating my M&Ms and the race organiser says, "Oh, Simon, there's a rock field." I'm like, "What do you mean a rock field?" She says, "Well, it's a field of rocks." I'm like, "Okay, no one told me there was a rock field." She went, "Yeah, there's a rock field." Okay, great. So we head out, we get to the rock field, and Neil comes over and says, "Simon, he looks bad." I'm like, "Well, how bad is bad?" And he says, "Rocks from the size of your fist to a loaf of bread, density of sprinkles on a donut." He says, "You're not going to get through it. You're not going to get a clean foot." And I'm like, "Well, I really don't want to quit. Let's give it a shot." So we head in to this rock field. Rather predictably, it turns out a blind person cannot get through a rock field. I'm starting to sustain a lot of damage. I take the skin off the bottom of my left foot. I didn't know it at the time, but I also began to separate where the IT band connects to your leg. So I was basically losing lateral movement in my left leg. But the problem is with the rock field, once you're in, no one's going to come and get you. You've got to get out. So I had to dig really deep in a lot of pain, break free of the rock field, finish for the day. I tell myself if I can stand the next day, I'm going to go back out. Unfortunately, the next day I could stand, so I had to go back out. So we head back out. The temperature's now getting up to like 45 degrees Celsius. It's getting pretty hot. And we get to another rock field. Not wanting to quit, I'm like, let's give it another shot again, but this time I get a few steps in and the pain is unbearable. I make the very difficult decision to quit, perhaps only the second time in my life I've quit. But I left that desert knowing that I'd proven that a blind person can compete solo. That's what I'd gone there to prove. I'd done that. All I was doing now was continuing to take a lot of damage. But the problem is when you bow out of a desert race, you still got to survive in the desert. And because you've left the race, you're so upset you eat all your food. So now you've got to survive in the desert with no food for a few days, which turns out is really not any fun. But I survived the desert, obviously, because I'm here. So I head home. It's 3 months, so I get lateral movement back in my left leg. So now I think, well, let's go back out, let's train. So first training session back out, my wife drops me off at the airport. 10 minutes later, she gets a phone call from me. And I'm saying, "I'm hurt, it's bad. You've got to find me." So she comes looking for me. She finds a trail of blood that leads to me. And what had happened is someone had left a burnt out car in the middle of the pavement, obviously did not see it, ran into it, went straight into my shin, went into my knee, sliced around my knee. You instinctively put your arms out. As I fell forward, it went into my arm and sliced all the way down my arm. Thankfully, it did not break my phone, so I could still call my wife to come and get me. But now I'm thinking, maybe we need to tidy this up with technology. I cannot continue to damage myself like this. So, I can't continue to run into things in the desert. I've got a wife, I've got kids, I probably do need to stay alive. So I'm like, what can we do in technology to really move this forward? Now, thankfully, the project with IBM had really inspired other people to do similar technology, and especially around corrective navigation. So I thought, why not reach out to one of these companies, work together, and see what we could do. So I reached out to a company called WhereWorks in America. We began working together in April for me to compete in the New York City Marathon solo. So that was a few weeks ago now. And the way this system worked was very similar to the desert. Corrective navigation again, turns out corrective navigation is a really, really good way for blind people to navigate. So there was an armband that used haptic feedback to do the sort of macro navigation, being like turn left, turn right, so on and so on and so on. But perhaps the biggest issue in New York is object avoidance. There's 50,000 other runners in that race. So that's a lot of moving objects, a lot of people to avoid. So the way we did it, really, really simple. Ultrasonic sensors on my chest with the haptic vibration motors underneath. that created a corridor. If someone entered that corridor, it would vibrate and the amplitude would change depending on how close they were to me. So very, very, very simple. So I head to the start line, and I don't know if anyone knows the race, but you start on a 2-mile bridge and you run across the 2-mile bridge. So it's on this 2-mile bridge that we discovered that the band seems to be glitching a little bit more than we'd anticipated. So I lose macro navigation. So that means we now have to navigate the entire race on the distance between me and the person in front, or whether there's even somebody there. This becomes challenging. I managed to sustain this for 15 miles, including navigating the course, overtaking, locking in behind people, moving around. But that was the secondary system, so we never quite finalised that product. And unfortunately, it was raining. The rain got to it. So after 15 miles, the performance deteriorated to the point where I could no longer navigate using the sensors. But no blind person had ever covered that distance in a city marathon. And it was a phenomenal distance to cover. And I obviously wasn't going to quit. So we took off the chest band. We'd actually lost the guide runner at this point, which was handy, because we had a guide runner as backup. And Neil Bacon again, he'd got lost. Don't know how he got lost. It's a course, you can only go one way. But yeah, he got lost. So we didn't actually meet him until just after the device had broken. And then we crossed the finish line together with a guide runner. But it still stood as a fantastic achievement. You know, and technology improves every day. So we'll be able to move that forward. And hopefully, one day in the not too distant future, I'll become the first blind person to finish the entire race solo. So that's my story so far and how it intertwines with technology. I apologise for my voice, it is breaking a little bit, but I have still got enough voice for questions if anyone would like to ask any questions on technology, adventuring or accessibility. Thank you.
Anybody got a question? Sorry, my voice is going as well. Anybody got a question?
Has this changed your way of guiding outside of running? Did you use a cane or long cane or any other?
What do you mean navigating on a daily basis?
Yeah.
And the idea of this technology is to get it to that point, so it become a companion to the cane or the dog. I, on a day-to-day basis, would usually use my guide dog. I had a bit of a long day today, so he's at home resting. So I'm long caning it today. But yeah, the idea with the technology is to be a companion, never a replacement. We're never going to be able to replace that dog. And some people like the cane. But technology can do things that the dog and cane are incapable of doing. You know, essentially a dog, you may need to know the route, it may struggle to find a door, an empty chair. You know, these are things that technology can solve, so why not pair them and be able to move around far better?
Ooh, question down at the front.
Explain the technology behind the actual app, as in like the language or the artificial intelligence or how, you know, augmented reality, what was it that made it work?
The one for New York?
Yeah. Or the latest one, the latest version?
The latest version, probably can't talk about that, but the version in New York was basically built upon the way we did it in the desert. It's basically a combination of GPS and compass bearings, and you use those information points to understand direction of movement, and you can get reasonable accuracy. So what it does, it creates a virtual corridor that exists of a particular width. You can set that width. And as soon as you deviate or begin working on a bearing that will exit you from that virtual corridor, that's when it uses haptics to nudge you back into the corridor. So that system was just GPS and, like I say, compass bearings. But obviously, we all know GPS and compass bearings have the faults. So moving forward, it's certainly more of a sensor fusion setup where you begin to use things like, augmented reality, perhaps a bit of video odometry, and understanding your movement within that scene and using the GPS and the compass bearing just to add that extra bit of information.
It's quite an inspirational story you've given. Have you had much feedback from other people? Has it inspired them to do similar things?
I'd never encourage another blind person to go out and train solo like I did. While I stand up on stage and joke about it, the level of mistake is measured in inches. If you made a mistake, you weren't coming back. I was running along national speed limit roads. If I went wrong, you cannot encourage another blind person to do that. So people have come to me and asked for me to help them learn to do it. It's too dangerous. But the technology can reduce that risk. So while I'm willing to go out there and perhaps have a higher appetite for risk, if that encourages companies, and I work with those companies to make the technology exist to make it safer, that's what I always aim to do. But having put in that massive disclaimer, yes, there are a few of the blind people that have started doing it. Eric Manza does it out in Boston, Jason Romero out in California. I think Richard Hunter out in California a little bit, but he's got a guide dog that's specially trained to run with him. But yeah, there's a few other people out there that are doing it, but yeah, let's not really recommend it until we've got the technology to make it safer.
My name is Jonathan. Congratulations, you brilliant story. I've got slightly more vision than you, so slight advantage, but not much. So have you got a lot of companies now clamoring to work with you to come up with this sort of technology or whatever you're working on that you can't tell us about? Are you going to bring it on soon?
Yes. That's a difficult question for me to answer in a public forum. Yes, there are companies that are interested in doing it. There's a company right now that is making the transition to computer vision, which is very interesting. But I'm personally interested in creating technology that has an accessible price point. We can look at things like eSight, who can realistically afford it. It's 10 grand a pop. Even Orcam, 2,500. Ira, 2,500 to buy it, 2 grand a year subscription. These things are just unbelievable from a price perspective. So I'm interested in working with companies that are willing to lower that cost of entry. And there are some companies out there that are willing to do that. So yeah, let's see where it goes in the next 12 to 18 months. There is a roadmap from one particular company that they reckon will have it by April 2019. But I obviously can't say much more than that.
Simon, my name is Kevin. So you obviously talked about the risk. So what is it about running that makes you willing to take that risk?
It's just a great opportunity to explore what's possible. Before I started out on this journey, I didn't even think these things were possible. It's not like I started running 7 years ago and thought, I'm going to run across the desert. I'm going to run New York solo. The idea was to run along a football pitch, which seemed achievable at that point in time. And every time, you make that extra little achievement, you want more. So it just drew me in, and it was an opportunity to explore how far I could go. And because I've got a big love of technology, it wasn't long before I started getting to work with companies that I'd always dreamed of working with. So yeah, it's just been a great opportunity to play with technology, which I love, and get to explore what's possible. If it hadn't been running, I think it'd have been something else, just that running was there at the point in time when I was really looking to find something to do.
Is the technology all about navigation at this point, or does it detect obstacles as well? So can it get to the point of something like a sonar of what's in your immediate vicinity?
I struggle to hear that clearly, but we're saying, does it detect obstacles? Is that
Yes.
correct?
So can you have something like a sonar system that gives you haptic feedback of obstacles in your
Yeah,
immediate
that's exactly what we were using in New York. I don't think that's got a great future in it, the way we did it. I think you're always going to get something slightly more successful with the time of flight sensor, you know, using maybe some kind of lasers, or typically how Face ID works on the iPhone, you know, with the infrared map. So it gives you depth. Because once you can understand the depth of a scene, it's quite easy to pick out obstacles. So that's the direction it's going. And also, you know, if you can begin to get stereoscopic vision, you get that depth. So more than anything, it's understanding depth and then translating it into something that the human can understand. Because that's the real limiting factor for me right now. Yeah, we can throw more sense at it. You know, technology always improves. But how do we communicate the information to the user? If we're continuously using audio, like move left, move right, it starts to get quite difficult. So we really need to explore how much we can sort of communicate to the human and what the best modality is for, say, object avoidance versus macro navigation being turn left, turn right. So yeah, time of flight, lasers, infrared, that's the future. And a lot of people are working on that, actually.
How involved were you in the process of developing it? Did you kind of, were there trials that you were a part of, or did you kind of feedback ideas? Or
which one? The IBM or where works?
Kind of from the IBM, I guess, the like romanticness of the story.
The IBM one, I basically went with an idea of exactly how I believed it should work in terms of the corrective, how you'd notify how that would work in a given scenario. And then the Bluemix Garage then just turned that very kindly into code in a short space of time. And that was just, you know, to and fro, me testing. And yeah, I'd say it's a collaborative process. I'd say my idea, my vision, their tech skills. And then the Where Works one, wow, that's too complicated to go into. But I am actually doing my computer science, my master's in computer science, so I do have a reasonable technical background.
One last question.
I'll be around at the end.
Yes,
in the ring thing.
Any more questions?
No more questions?
So I've got a quick question then.
Oh, okay.
So do you, are there any kind of navigation apps on the iPhone or the Iwatch or those sorts of things that are helpful at all? Or is that?
Oh, well, yeah, you know, if you've got a dog, Google Maps itself is reasonably useful.
Yeah.
But there's just it just doesn't ever seem quite enough. For example, I think they call it like the last 10 feet or the last 10 metre problem, where it's obviously a geofence. So I could say you've arrived at your location, but for a blind person, have I? Where's the door?
Yeah.
How to get into the building?
Yeah.
So there's always that gap. And that's the real difficulty. Can we solve that last 10 feet problem? And even when I'm in the building, it's not like it's solved. You know, walk into this building, where's reception?
Yeah.
You know, I'll walk into a Starbucks or a restaurant, where's the menu? And these are all the things that, you know, you can join with the dog, because the dog can do the macro or the cane, whichever you prefer. And then the technology can begin to do the micro, or some companies are even exploring the nano navigation. So by nano, for example, that would mean, I know I'm going way off piece here because it isn't on the App Store right now, but I'll just quickly mention what nano navigation is. So let's say we sat at a table in a restaurant, a waiter puts down a drink, I have no idea where anything on that table actually is. So the nano navigation problem is, how can we communicate the objects that are on that table? Obviously we could use object detection, it could go glass, plate, but what are all the locations? And then how do we begin to solve that? So there's a few companies looking at that. But in terms of what's on the App Store right now, there's not really anything great. There's Blind Square and stuff, which does a bit of description. But I'm always interested in that last few feet problem. And that's the bit that I'm interested in solving.
Awesome. Brilliant. Well, please join me in thanking Simon for an incredible story. Would you like a glass of water? There you go. Okay. And have you got the clicker? So we'll down, yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much for all coming to another brilliant accessibility event. We do have another one lined up soon. Okay. I've just seen the slide. Okay, so we are advertising for a senior accessibility engineer at GDS. So if you want to come and join the GDS team, have a look on LinkedIn, the civil service jobs website. Job roles open for the next couple of weeks, I think. So come and join a team if you fancy. The next London Accessibility Meetup is on December the 19th. We have another assistive technology theme. So we've got Hector Into, who is the assistive technology evangelist at Microsoft. He'll be coming in to talk about assistive technology and sharing some of the cool stuff that Microsoft are working on. And then Frank Bilgen, he's going to be talking about assistive technology in the physical space using beacons and Internet of Things and those sorts of things. As it's Christmas, I was thinking of also doing a Christmas accessibility quiz. Would people be interested in doing a quiz if I put on a quiz? Put your hands up if that would be of any interest. About half, just over half the room. Not sure if you're lying or not. Okay, cool. So I think we might do that because we can have the room with tables and we can have food and drink in here, so we can have a bit more of a Christmas social gathering. So that's December 19th. Tickets will be out 2 weeks before the event again, and we'll be tweeting that. So keep your eye out for that. Once again, I'd like to say another huge thank you to Barclays Access. They have provided the captioning. Again, thank you for the captioning. You have done an amazing job there. Thank you for the venue. Thank you for the food. Thank you for the video. And thanks also for helping with some of the organisation, getting people in on the door. So a big round of applause to Barclays. We have the venue for another half an hour. There are drinks and nibbles over in the other bit. So do go and do a bit of networking, and hopefully see you here next month. Thank you very much.